That's right. Donald Trump is not a Russian asset. He is a Chinese asset. Okay? Yeah. Say bye-bye to AUKUS, buddy. He's doing the same thing he did with Barack Obama. That's a great cut. And then a great next video. Classic Channel 4.
Not a Russian missile attack, but a controlled explosion in a Ukrainian mine for graphite, a mineral used in lithium-ion batteries and nuclear reactors. Ukraine also has titanium used in the aerospace industry. But the draft deal doesn't surrender control over Ukraine's mineral resources to the US, as President Trump initially demanded. Rather, it's an attempt to ensure that both countries benefit. Today, President Zelensky was posing with a map of Ukraine's mineral.
Look how quickly Big Homie played ball, by the way. Am I crazy? I feel like, Mr. President, you are living in world of lies. Mr. President Donald Trump, you are living in Vladimir Putin's lies. Next week, he's like, look at my mineral map. I love Mr. President. I love these minerals. Please help us extract, Mr. President. Trump is out here being like, dude, you're a fucking dictator. You suck. You're the reason why your country got invaded. You ain't shit. Your comedy's got horrible letterbox reviews. Okay? And when did Zelensky become French? I mean, he does. He sounds like that. What happened? I thought Ukrainian sovereignty, Ukrainian autonomy. I mean, what is he supposed to do? To be fair, he ain't got nothing. But just saying, oh, Zelensky approval down 20%. Last week, Republicans were about evenly split on Zelensky, unfavorable to 38% favorable. Today, after Trump's attacks, Republicans dislike Zelensky 56% to 20%. Yeah, I think part of it is that Trump let slip yesterday when talking about Zelensky coming to D.C. on Friday that they were going to provide another $350 billion in support. Mentioned Zelensky could fight as long as he wants. Oh my God. Oh my God. That would be. I'm not saying anything. I'm not saying anything. Oh my God. Are they gonna lower the draft age? If they actually end up lowering the draft age for Ukraine, I'm gonna lose my fucking mind. All right, let's.
Resources. For him, the key is that any deal should include U.S. security guarantees. It's not yet clear whether it does.
This deal could be a great success, or it could quietly pass. The big success depends on our conversation with President Trump.
Here in Washington, President Trump made an announcement at the start of his first cabinet meeting.
President Zelensky is going to be coming on Friday. That's now confirmed, and we're going to be signing an agreement, which will be a very big agreement.
But he didn't make a future commitment to Ukraine's security.
Well, I'm not going to make security guarantees beyond very much. We're going to have Europe do that because it's in, we're talking about Europe as their next door neighbor.
And he seemed unaware that while Ukraine has many critical minerals, it doesn't have much in the way of rare earths.
We very much need rare.
Did Disney dupe Donald Trump into thinking that Ukraine has rare earth minerals? Which Donald Trump mistranslated to raw earth minerals. Raw earth. We're going to the earth raw. Hasan, share your porn. Share my porn. Are you all right?
Rare earth. They have great rare earth. It brings us great wealth. We get back the money that we spent, and we hope that we're going to be able to settle this up.
In fact, the US extracts rare earths, elements essential for new green technologies such as wind turbines, from a mine at Mountain.
Yeah, bro thought we were on Kick. He's like, bro, porn reacts, please. Porn reacts when? Pago? Porn reacts, please.
Pass in California. The problem is that 90% of rare earths are processed in China, even when mined in the US. The bottleneck isn't finding more rare earth deposits. It's China's domination of processing, and the Ukraine deal isn't going to solve that. President Putin, today meeting the president of Guinea-Bissau, may be less happy. On Monday, coincidentally, he was telling his officials that Russia has far more rare earths than Ukraine, and America would be welcome to exploit them. In Kyiv, a few people were protesting against the deal. They fear that President Trump wants to loot their country's mineral resources. As Ukrainians say, the only free cheese is in the mousetrap.
Well, Lindsay, Keir Starmer is on his way to Washington now. How's all this going to play into his visit?
I think it's going to be quite complicated. President Macron of France was here earlier in the week. He and the Prime Minister have said they'd be willing to provide peacekeeping forces for Ukraine. But Foreign Minister Lavrov of Russia again today said there is absolutely no way that they would accept peacekeeping force that is out. And yet here we have President Trump saying, well, you know, the Americans aren't going to provide any security guarantees. That's up to Europe. And yet all of this is putting the cart before the horse. There is no peace deal. There are not even any negotiations yet. Tomorrow in Istanbul, there will be discussions between the Americans and the Russians, but just about re-establishing proper diplomatic relations. They say nothing about Ukraine at all. So all of this stuff about them.
This was a deal from day one. They should have known this happens all the time with America KKA. Then again, it's either be invaded by Russia or be an indentured slave of America KKA. Pick your poison. I don't know if it would have been an invasion of Russia. I think it would have been an overtaking by Russia. And then Russia would still end up most likely taking advantage of your natural resources. The invasion by Russia only accelerated America's interest in Ukraine, basically using Ukraine as a way to fight back against the Russian military forces, offload a bunch of older weapons, and also force Ukraine to privatize key sectors and then pick it apart for profit with foreign capital. Now we're also taking the minerals too. It was no matter what. Like, Ukraine was screwed no matter what, since they didn't have nukes. Don't give up the nukes. What do I say to people who say they are the same people anyway? What do you mean they are the same people? Like, dude, all jokes aside, okay, it's I'm not going to say this is like anti-Slavic racism or whatever, but like, it's like when Israelis say, oh, well, what's the difference? They're all Arabs. Like, come on. Like, I think people have a right to sovereignty, you know? Like, it's kind of the whole reason why nation states were developed. That's crazy. This is just a joint US-Russia invasion on different fronts. Yeah. People call him Krasnov, not just for his alignment with Russian interests, but because ex-KGB officials alleged he was cultivated as an asset in the 80s. No, I know. I love that one. Also, if Donald Trump is Krasnov, then was Biden also Krasnov? Was he also a Russian asset? Because apparently Biden was also quietly trying to cut the same mineral extraction deal with Ukraine while he was also in charge. This is why I say American foreign policy is uniparty. Do you believe the Russian asset claims? No, I don't believe the Russian asset claims. Anyway, HasanAbi, the double Krasnov theory. Oh my God. Misunderstanding my point that way is really funny. Yeah. Brandonovsky and Krasnov are both KGB assets. Is there anything you like about Trump and or his admin? Yes, I like that he's the real Manchurian candidate and that he actually is not a Russian asset, but a Chinese one. And he is literally undermining American hegemonic superpower status every day of the week, dismantling KKA's U.S. aid soft power capabilities. Wait until he sells the vassal state of Australia to Chinese protectorate. That's right. Donald Trump is not a Russian asset. He is a Chinese asset. Okay? Yeah. Say bye-bye to AUKUS, buddy. He's doing the same thing he did with Barack Obama. You know how like he wanted to undermine everything that Barack Obama had done? He heard Joe Brandon talk about the Finlandization of NATO, but the NATOization of Finland. AUKUS, Jack. One too many times and decided, you know what? I'm going to dismantle AUKUS piece by piece. Five eyes? More like bye-byes. Agent Orange, dude. Don't lie, Hasan. He's our big, beautiful Russian Ollie baby. Yeah.
Mineral resources and about the peacekeeping forces. It's all way in the future. What Prime Minister Starmer is going to have to do is try and persuade President Trump that there has to be a serious negotiation that doesn't give Russia all that it wants.
Yeah, bro, he's dismantling AFRICOM. He closed up, didn't he? I think he closed a Greek base. Like, he closed an American base in Greece. White House officials pushes to axe Canada from the Five Eyes. Oh my God, he literally, the mad lad. Five Eyes, bye-byes. Oh my God. We need to find a Chinese name for Donald Trump. JD Pondon, dude. The absolute mad lad. He said, nah, no more American global dominance. Okay? Yeah, it's Four Eyes now. Five Eyes, bye-byes. It's Four Eyes. Oh my God. I feel dumb as, what even is this and what does it mean? Five Eyes is, as the title suggests, a intelligence group of 5 nations, Canada being one of them. America seemingly is interested in taking Canada out of the equation. A top White House official has proposed expelling Canada from the Five Eyes intelligence sharing network as Donald Trump increases pressure on the country. He talks about turning into the 51st state. Peter Navarro, one of U.S. president's closest advisors. You know what's really funny about Peter Navarro? He is like the OG China hawk. Like, is Peter Navarro the original Chinese asset? He wrote like 1 million books on how we have to go over China now. Like, many years before capital owners were enjoying the bounty of outsourcing manufacturing to China, Peter Navarro was busy writing books about how devastating this is. This motherfucker's been on the anti-China tip far before it was even a consideration, like far before China developed and became a competitive superpower. Okay? And now he's the one who's saying, fuck Canada, take him out of Five Eyes. And Donald Trump loves Peter Navarro. Yes, China was the great sleeping dragon we had to go to economic war with. My dad ate that shit up. Yeah, it turns out he was saying all of that specifically to gain favor. And make Americans think that he wasn't a Chinese asset. Trump has said he wants to annex Canada and has vowed to press ahead with 25% tariffs on imports in the country when a 1-month reprieve elapses on March 4th. I truly don't know. I mean, I do think that they're going to increase militancy against China. I think a lot of this stuff that they're doing is because they want to increase militancy against China, including the stuff that they're doing with Russia. Partially because like they do a lot of like aesthetic things. Okay. They do a lot of aesthetic shit that I think, basically show their hand. Like they eliminated from the State Department website, a statement that has existed in perpetuity that the United States would not defend Taiwan. I think they deleted that because, you know, they're basically gearing up for that. I suspect they increase pressure on the Philippines and use the Philippines to dismantle any sort of security partnership that China tries to create in the South China Sea in an effort to no longer have the, you know, boat ramming operations that happen all the time, or like the fucking water cannons that they spray the Filipino boats with. And then they also increasingly apply pressure through Taiwan. That's what I think. All jokes aside, I don't think that Donald Trump is dismantling America, like America's hegemonic superpower status. I think that this is, I think he's going to increase the pressure and go hard power only. Even though, ironically enough, in the interim, it seems like he's just isolating our allies. Yeah, many Chinese nationalists refer to Trump by a nickname, Chuan Shangao, meaning Trump the nation builder. It is supposed to be ironic. They mean he is making China stronger by undermining America. But also some admire the aspects of the president-elect. What the fuck are these replies, dude? To be honest, I don't think there was ever any question that they would defend Taiwan just for the chip manufacturing alone. Okay. Let's say you are going to defend Taiwan because of the chip manufacturing. Why the fuck did Donald Trump float tariffing Taiwan in order to force them to move chip manufacturing to the United States of America? If I'm an administrator in Taiwan and I hear that, I'm like, get the fuck out of here, dude. Yeah, no. Chinese unification now. Peaceful reunification tomorrow. Peaceful reunification yesterday. The fuck? America is the least reliable ally of all time, dude. Anyway, it just genuinely, a lot of this stuff genuinely doesn't make sense. Okay? My head hurts.
Lindsay Hilson in Washington. Well, joining me now is the Ukrainian MP and leader of the Holos Party, Kira Rudik. A week ago, Ukrainians were talking about how betrayed they felt by Donald Trump. Is that still how you feel?
Hello, Christian, and thank you so much for having me. Well, we feel actually very, very confused because President Trump is operating under the unconfirmed illusion that Putin wants peace. We did not see any fact that would support that in our last week or any time before. We are attacked every single night in our peaceful cities. The fighting at the front line continues. And for some reason, there are discussions about rare minerals, which is a very far-fetched shot, while Europe holds 300 billion of Russian assets that can be much easily taken and used if there is a need for it.
So what is President Zelensky up to, going to Washington on Friday to sign a deal that, as you say, seems, well, it kind of seems not worth the paper it's not written on?
Well, it seems that President Trump is trying to deliver on some of the promises that he made to the American people. And for that, he needs to have a deal that he can announce. But the way that we have seen this deal is just like a framework. It's not clear that is it a deal about the past or is it a deal about the future? And if there is any more details there, it will have to get into the Ukrainian parliament and be ratified by the parliament. So we will have to know all the details. So right now, it is very hard to see how the deal that's being signed is going to lead us into having the ceasefire or peace deal, because it's not linked at all.
So if Zelensky goes ahead and signs something, which you say he can't do because it needs to be ratified by the Ukrainian parliament, I mean, is he risking his own presidency by doing this?
No, he will sign the framework that he is allowed to. But if he would want to go into details, like, again, really deferring some of Ukraine's rare minerals, really changing the budgeting, really changing the taxes codexes in Ukraine and all kinds of bills, because we are not talking about like just one piece of paper. We are talking about like massive collaboration between the countries, the governments with the funds that will require pretty tectonic changes in Ukrainian legislation. So it's not as quick as going on the TV show and announcing it. It's a long-term legislative work that we'll have to do, and we will do if there is a need to. But again, right now, we do not have the details for it. We do not understand how it brings peace to our country. And most of all, we do not understand how is it that we have to give rare minerals to the United States, but Europe is responsible for our security.
Right. Well, what do you make of the other side of this conversation, in which Britain and France are talking about peacekeepers and Russia is saying, forget it. You know, there's no way they will accept that as part of any peace.
I believe that Russia is saying that, and I believe that as of right now, there is not a clear understanding that we have seen from any leader just yet of how to make Russia stop. Again, what we have heard that Russia wants to end the war is something that President Trump said that we were not able to confirm by any facts on the ground. So for us, things don't change. We have to fight at the front line. We have to try to save our lives during attacks, and we have to continue to operate as the country. And everything else right now has no influence on Putin's actions. And we appreciate what Keir Starmer and President Macron are doing. We really appreciate that. But it needs to be a complex solution that is just not there yet.
Who has given what and will they get their cash back? This right here, by the way, explains two different things. Okay. One, that Donald Trump is basically accelerating certain things that were already in motion in terms of like American foreign policy being uniparty and simply saying the quiet part out loud. And two, it proves once again that when Donald Trump says something, okay, people inevitably play catch up after he says it. At first, people resist it. Okay. At first, people turn around and they resist. They're like, what the fuck do you mean? Zelensky comes out and is like, what do you mean? We're going to give you minerals. Get the fuck out of here. That's crazy. Why are you promoting Russia? And then, lo and behold, a week later, Zelensky is signing the mineral deal. And now you got our European allies and their state broadcasters, their private broadcasters, basically talking about like what this process is going to look like. That's it. Like, we just moved away from the ethics of the situation. We just moved away from the ethics of the situation to, okay, well, how will we make this happen?
You've probably heard all of this talk.
My question is, why do they give in like this every time? Because the inception of it was also with American involvement. Because what are you going to do about it? Might is right politics is what dominates the world. Okay? And America is still, at this stage, the #1 global superpower. So whether they play ball and make nice and make you feel like you came to this conclusion on your own in the way that Democratic administrations do, or whether, or even previous Republican administrations used to also at least apply a little bit of manufacturing consent, or you do it in the hardball style that Donald Trump engages with, it still doesn't change the outcome at all because America still holds all the cards.
Talk recently about the amount of aid that's been going to Ukraine, about whether the US is going to be able to get billions of dollars back for that aid. What's really going on? Well, I'm going to give you a little primer here. Quick guide to all of this stuff, starting with how much money has been given in terms of aid. There's various different categories of aid. So military aid, that's Europe, 62 billion euros. The US slightly further ahead, 64 billion euros of military aid from the US. But of course, that's not the only kind of thing and the only kind of support gone out to Ukraine. There's also other aid. There's humanitarian, there's financial aid. That brings up the European total to about 132, and it's higher than the US, okay? And if you include other things, so the aid that's been promised but hasn't yet been delivered, Europe looks even further ahead. And interestingly, if you look back through the kind of history of this conflict and just how much that aid has crept up, that's European aid, and how much it's crept up since 2022, that's Europe. It's gone up relatively steadily. Look at the US. That's gone up. It was steady for a while. Then it was flatlining, and then when it went up again, what was going on there? It was that when Congress was blocking the new support. So you really see it there kind of visually in terms of the aid that was handed over or wasn't handed over to Ukraine. But kind of back to this, the big picture here, okay? So this includes a lot of different countries. So if we want to get a better sense of comparing different countries and how much they've given, you really need to divide it by every single individual nation. And we can do that here, okay? So this is individual countries, not just Europe as a whole, individual countries. And it's clear the US is comfortably the single biggest donor in cash terms. There you've got the UK down there, and Germany are kind of among the biggest donors, but nowhere near where the US is. But that's the key point, cash terms. Okay, now do it as a percentage of the size of the economy, and it's a different picture. Okay, so same data, but as a percentage of GDP. And look, it's different. Okay, so the US and the UK about 0.5% of their GDP, which is a better way of comparing it, really. Whereas it's countries like Estonia and Denmark, the Baltics, Finland, Sweden, places like that, which are giving much more of their national income to support Ukraine. And then places like Germany, even further down, because it's got a bigger GDP. So quite striking there. Worth saying, though, to get a bit of a historical context here, let's compare how much aid has been given this time around with previous conflicts. So this is specifically US aid to Ukraine this time around. That bar is there. It's 0.3 because it's just that's the annual figure rather than for the entire period. This is World War II. So World War II Lend-Lease, far more. US and Korea, far more. Vietnam, far more. Gulf War, far more. Ukraine is tiny in comparison to all of those things.
Yeah, because this is a proxy war. These are America instances of conquest. Yeah, no shit. Yeah, ultimately, when you compare it to instances where you literally deployed the military, yeah, it's going to be fucking way more expensive.
It's still, sizable in cash terms, but compared with those, really quite small. And it's not just the US. So take the Gulf War.
Yeah, no, World War II is not what I'm talking about. World War II is not, obviously. I didn't even bring up World War II because that's a fucking stupid ass comparison to make in comparison to the US and Korea. Okay? Like, that's a totally different thing. Says an actual terrorist. I don't support America. I don't support Israel. It's so funny to be like, says the actual terrorist. Meanwhile, we're literally covering how America is currently fucking over an entire nation with 40 million people and just completely eviscerating their sovereignty and nakedly extracting the remainder of their natural resources. And you're like, pah! You fucking terrorist. Why am I a terrorist? Because I think Israel shouldn't do a genocide, which America also is, you know, funding and facilitating. Like, how can you not respond to anything that you are seeing on screen? How are all these guys who turn around? Hasan doesn't have any analysis whatsoever. He just says America bad and moves on, when in fact I do actually explain why I say America bad in most circumstances, with notable exceptions. And this is one of the very glaringly obvious instances where America is, as a matter of fact, very bad. Okay? We are doing very bad things to Ukraine. We are doing very, very bad things to Ukraine. And you're still like, nah, you don't understand, dude. America good. Shut up.
And look at how much different countries paid for the Gulf War in terms of support, particularly for Kuwait. US, Germany, UK, Japan. That's Gulf War, those bars. Now compare it to Ukraine.
Look, this guy goes, yeah, you actually support terrorists. It's on video. Yes, dude. Anyone and everyone that engages in any sort of emancipatory act against America and their allies are terrorists. You cannot fight back against being dominated. You will be branded a terrorist. You got me. Okay? The IRA, Nelson Mandela, the Algerian Liberation Movement, all terrorists. I know. Everyone's a terrorist, except for the people who are terrorizing the largest percentages of the population. Okay? Anyway, yeah. The Viet Cong are terrorists.
I'll bring up those bars. So it was smaller, so less money going to support Ukraine this time around than went for the Gulf War from basically all of those major economies. Quite striking, really, isn't it? However, okay, every country can contribute more. Worth just saying, okay? So when
gotta love these downstream effects of your former podcast co-host constantly broadcasting you with a Photoshop Qassam headband and calling you a literal terrorist for the past 6 months to his baby-brained audience that can't put together a single thought without the help of a slob video. I know. And the thoughts themselves are not particularly interesting, unique, or clever. Okay? Terrorist. You are terrorist. You are terrorist. You want terror. Okay? You like terror. You support terrorists. 100%. Same with the echo chamber chat. You are doing terror. Have you seen the quilts at the United Nations? Have you seen the children and the quilts that they've made? They are doing terror quilts. Stop with the terror. Terror babies. Terror babies. They are doing terrorism. Look at this baby. This baby that we destroyed with GBU-39 Boeing rockets actually was on his way to reading the copy of Mein Kampf. This baby, as you can see in this pile of blood, was reading this perfectly annotated copy of Mein Kampf that is somehow in English. That's right. It is okay to kill this baby.
When it comes to these bars, there's been so much debate recently, particularly from Donald Trump, a bit of a conversation with Emmanuel Macron about this, about how much of this European money was actually a loan, so it's going to come back. And that's what Donald Trump claimed. It's not entirely true. It's about kind of 1/3 true, because some of this money, particularly the financial aid, was structured as a loan. So some of that money theoretically will come back to Europe after a long period. It's a pretty lax loan, but still, it is a loan, whereas that's a grant. And that is why Donald Trump is saying, look, we take that money, we need to get something back. Okay, and he says he's done a deal, or at least he's in the process of doing a deal, certainly nothing's been signed yet, with the Ukrainian president, where he thinks it could be $500 billion back in return for all of that aid given. You're probably wondering at this stage, how on earth do you get $500 billion out of Ukraine? Well, the answer, he says, is rare earths. What are rare earths? They're a type of critical mineral, mostly used in electronics, in military equipment as well. And there are some rare earths deposits in Ukraine.
I like that the entire piece revolves around Actually, there might not be any rare earth minerals at all. Okay? Raw earth. It's funny because it's like the only mineral maps that exist, I guess, about, from what I understand, okay? I'm not the most knowledgeable about Ukrainian minerals. I will admit. I am not the talented crackhead Hunter Biden who knows all about the energy dominance of Ukraine. That's why he got 80 grand a month or $200,000 a month in pay from Burisma. But from what I understand, the only evidence that there is a lot of minerals in Ukraine also comes from like USSR maps, which could be true. I just don't know when this became like the major thing. They have a lot of stuff that China produces. Heroin made RFK good at school. Crack made Hunter good at energy. Yeah, he knows.
And this is a kind of mineral map of the country. If we zoom into this area here, it's in actually the occupied territory, which is, I think, part of the point here. And the Ukrainians were suggesting this. Old Soviet deposit here supposedly has lots of rare earths. The issue, though, but the reason, of course, obviously, Donald Trump wants to do this, is when you look at total rare earth production around the world, and you need rare earths for, like, electric cars, for the magnets in those cars, for all of those wind turbines, it's magnets, it's military equipment. China is massively dominant when it comes to mining rare earths. It's massively dominant when it comes to refining rare earths, which is really the hardest thing to do when it comes to rare earths, because it's really expensive, it's really energy intensive. Totally dominant. So you can see, again, the geopolitical reasons why Donald Trump might want to think Ukraine might kill two birds with one stone here. However, look at the actual data, and it's not altogether obvious that there are many rare earths in Ukraine, even if you take account of that mine, which, like I say, it's been around for a long time. No one's entirely sure if you can get those rare earths out of it. It's still China way in the lead. Brazil, India, Russia, Vietnam, the US. Actually, Ukraine doesn't even show up in the most definitive measures of how much rare earths there are around the world. So some people have wondered, was he not really talking about critical minerals in general? Maybe he was talking not about rare earths, but about lithium, which, technically speaking, is a different part of the periodic table. Well, if that's the case, yes, there's a big lithium deposit in Ukraine, potentially the biggest in Europe. But here's the thing, Europe doesn't have that much lithium. And compare this with other deposits around the world. I've put it over here. And that, by the way, is a best case scenario. And Ukraine is still a minnow. It's smaller than Canada. It's smaller than the US when it comes to lithium, even bearing that in mind. And so perhaps it just might be, there are lots of minerals in Ukraine, but for the most part, it's the old-fashioned stuff. It's coal, it's iron ore. There's lots of iron ore around there. And it's also things like titanium. And so probably the most plausible explanation is that the president maybe thinks he can make some money out of those things, but I would still question.
So we're just like picking apart a carcass. This is fake news. Show the raw earths graph. What? Like, is there a lot? I don't know. Rare earths have usually been found on mountains. No mountains in Ukraine. Ukraine, very flat land. Flattest land. Only a body can stop a bullet. Oh, Chatter was joking about raw earth. Oh, raw earth, which is the new kind of earth that Trump is. I can't look at the situation in any way, shape, or form, but make the assessment that it's just a double fuck situation, an Eiffel Tower, if you will, where America is on the one hand, is on the one side, and Russia is on the other side, and they're basically ripping Ukraine raw of the seemingly minuscule amount of rare earth minerals or critical minerals it has to begin with. That's what it looks like. So I don't know. I just don't understand. I mean, beyond the fact that, like, obviously a ceasefire is an inevitability if the Ukrainian manpower is diminished, which I think is the real reason for why there will ever be a ceasefire. Because if Ukraine still had the standing forces and the capability of continuing to put up a fight against Russia, then yeah, America would keep shipping weapons because who gives a shit? You know what I mean? The bargain was always clear, which is for 0.5% of our GDP, or what is it, like, for, what is the Lindsey Graham take? It's like for a minuscule percentage of our military budget, we've been able to undermine a foreign adversary's military by 50%, which, disputable numbers, but whatever. For 5% of our military budget, we destroyed 50% of a foreign adversary's military without a single American soldier dying in the process, I'd say that's a pretty good deal.
Even bearing all of that in mind, it's going to be very difficult to get to the dollar total.